You know what's fascinating? Some of the most intuitive and emotionally intelligent people you'll ever meet didn't develop those abilities because they were born that way. They became remarkably skilled at adapting because the trauma of growing up in an unpredictable environment changed the way their brains learned to survive. Today, psychologists know that trauma doesn't just affect emotions. It can reshape the way the brain observes people, processes danger, and responds to the world. Some researchers have started calling these remarkable adaptations traumatic intelligence. And if you've never heard that term before, by the end of this video, you'll understand the psychology behind it and the 7 signs your brain may have developed it. Here's the psychological premise. Trauma doesn't simply leave emotional memories. It can also change the way the brain pays attention to the world. Research in developmental psychology suggests that when a child grows up in an unpredictable, emotionally unstable, or threatening environment, the brain begins to prioritize one thing above everything else: safety. Instead of asking, "What can I learn from this?" the brain starts asking, "What do I need to notice before something goes wrong?" Over time, that repeated pattern can strengthen the brain's ability to detect subtle emotional changes, recognize behavioral patterns, and anticipate possible threats. To other people, it may look like intuition, but psychology suggests it may actually be something much more complex. The first sign is that you notice things other people don't. You walk into a room, and almost immediately, something feels different. Maybe it's the way someone suddenly goes quiet, a quick glance that lasts just a little too long, a forced smile, or a subtle change in someone's voice that nobody else seems to notice. Most people ignore these details. Your brain doesn't. And according to psychologists, that's not necessarily because you're naturally more intuitive. It may be because your brain spent years learning that small changes in people's behavior could predict what happened next. When a child grows up in an unpredictable environment, the brain begins collecting patterns. Not consciously, but automatically. Who's angry today? Who's safe to talk to? Who's about to lose control? Over time, that constant observation becomes almost effortless. What feels like intuition may actually be years of unconscious pattern recognition. The second sign is that you stay surprisingly calm when everything around you falls apart. Most people assume that growing up around stress makes someone panic more easily. But psychologists have found that the opposite can sometimes happen. When the brain is repeatedly exposed to unpredictable situations, it learns to respond differently to pressure. Instead of becoming overwhelmed, it becomes focused. While everyone else is reacting emotionally, your mind starts looking for patterns, solutions, escape routes, the next step. This doesn't happen because you enjoy chaos. It happens because your nervous system has experienced it before. What feels overwhelming to someone else may feel strangely familiar to you, and familiarity often makes the brain think more clearly. The third sign is that you constantly try to understand why people do what they do. Most people pay attention to what someone says. You pay attention to why they said it. You notice inconsistencies, hidden intentions, changes in behavior that don't match someone's words. And without realizing it, you start building explanations in your mind. Psychologists believe this can develop in children who grow up around unpredictable caregivers. When someone's mood changes without warning, understanding people becomes more than curiosity. It becomes a survival strategy. Your brain starts asking questions other people never think to ask. Why did their voice change? Why did they suddenly go quiet? What happens next? Over time, your mind becomes less interested in what people say, and more interested in the patterns behind their behavior. The fourth sign is that your mind rarely stops scanning the world around you. Even when nothing is wrong, part of your brain keeps looking. You replay conversations. You notice changes in people's behavior. You wonder if you missed something, or if someone meant more than they actually said. To many people, this looks like overthinking, but psychologists suggest it may be something different. When the brain spends years learning that small details can predict emotional pain, it doesn't simply stop searching for them. It keeps scanning, even in safe places, even around safe people, Because your brain isn't trying to make your life harder. It's trying to make sure you're never caught off guard again. The fifth sign is that you often know what's about to happen before it happens. Not because you can predict the future, but because your brain has spent years learning patterns most people never notice. You hear a certain tone of voice, see a particular facial expression, or notice the way someone suddenly changes their posture. And almost instantly, your mind begins to anticipate what comes next. Maybe an argument, a disappointment, a sudden emotional shift. Psychologists suggest this isn't intuition in the mystical sense. It's pattern recognition operating below conscious awareness. When a child grows up in an unpredictable environment, the brain doesn't simply learn to react. It learns to anticipate, because predicting what happens next often meant having enough time to prepare for it. Over the years, that ability can become so automatic that you sometimes know how a situation will unfold before anyone else realizes something has changed. The sixth sign is that your greatest strength can also become your greatest source of exhaustion. Being highly aware isn't just about noticing more. It's about processing more emotions, more changes in people's behavior, more possibilities, more outcomes. While someone else moves on from an uncomfortable conversation, your brain may still be trying to understand it hours later. Not because you enjoy overthinking, but because your mind was trained to believe that understanding people could prevent pain. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, a state where the brain remains alert, even when there's no immediate danger. And while that awareness can make you incredibly perceptive, it can also make it incredibly difficult to truly rest. Think about that for a moment. Every sign we've talked about so far, reading people, staying calm under pressure, seeing patterns others miss, they all have something in common. They weren't designed to make life easier. They were designed to help someone survive. And that's what makes traumatic intelligence so remarkable. It isn't a talent. It's an adaptation. The seventh sign isn't really a sign at all. It's the reason all the others exist. If you've recognized yourself throughout this video, it doesn't necessarily mean you're more intelligent than everyone else. And it certainly doesn't mean trauma was a good thing. What it may mean is that your brain became incredibly good at adapting. It learned to observe before reacting, to predict before trusting, to understand before feeling safe. Those abilities may have protected you for years, but there's something important many people never realize. The brain that learned to survive can also learn that it doesn't have to survive anymore. And perhaps that's the most important part of traumatic intelligence. Not the ability to see what others miss, but the ability to finally realize that you no longer have to carry the weight of the past into every moment of your future. How many of these 7 signs felt familiar to you? Let me know in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear your experience.